want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of The Best Movie We Never Saw, and this week we're taking a look at a film that's a bit more recent than some of the other ones that we've talked about, 2006's Miami Vice.
Here we go.
Now, the saga of Crockett and Tubbs is immediately recognizable, especially as an archive and pop culture piece of the 1980s. I mean, it was a decade of excess, fluorescent lighting, rolled up sports coats, and fucking amazing hair. And if any show ever said amazing hair and all those other things, it was Miami Vice. Miami Vice ran for 5 seasons on NBC, about 3 good ones, let's be honest, and it drew heavily on the new wave culture and remained a syndication stalwart for about 30 years. It influenced everything from video games like Grand Theft Auto Vice City to the storytelling format of police procedurals like Law and Order. In fact, one of the reasons Law & Order is the way it is that Dick Wolf, who stepped in season 3 and arguably ruined the show, actually adopted a lot of the aspects of the show for Law & Order later on down the line. But I still think he ruined Miami Vice. I mean, he took away the pastels and cut Crockett's hair. How could you? I digress. Miami Vice returned to the mainstream in the early 2000s with series creator Michael Mann behind the camera. Only this big screen Miami Vice is virtually nothing like the television series it was based on, or so they say. In fact, if you're a real fan of the show, and of the first season in particular, you'll know that this whole movie is basically an adaptation of one of the best episodes, Smuggler's Blues, which was written by Miguel Pinheiro, the famous playwright that was played by Benjamin Bratt in a movie. That said, people I guess were expecting something light and very fun, but that never really was Miami Vice. It was a dark, nihilistic show right from the beginning, and I just don't think people were expecting Michael Mann to actually do an accurate representation of what the movie was on the big screen, just because they really don't honestly remember what the show was. They think of the music, they think of the flash, but they don't really think of any of the substance, and that's a big problem. So the box office was pretty much a wash. It cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 or so million, and it only made about $63.5 million domestically, plus another $100 million internationally. But the critical and fan reaction to the movie just wasn't very good, and Miami Vice unfortunately faded pretty quickly. But stories of the troublesome production have abounded. You see, it was not an easy shoot. Thank you for watching JoBlo videos. If you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell so you'll be notified each time a new video goes up. Now, back to the show. Starting in the late 1990s, a surge of films based on old TV shows flooded movie theaters. By 2005, shows like Starsky and Hutch and The Dukes of Hazzard had all been adapted as films, albeit they turned what were initially kinda serious dramas into goofy comedies. That said, they were very successful. Michael Mann, however, began developing the film version of Miami Vice when Jamie Foxx brought up the concept during a party for their 2001 film Ali. By the time production rolled around, Foxx had already reteamed with Mann on 2004's awesome Tom Cruise movie Collateral, a film that bears many visual similarities to the Miami Vice movie. Filming predominantly with digital, something that he employed on Ali and Collateral, and in fact was quite controversial amongst fans, Mann wanted this new Miami Vice to be completely distinct from the 80s series, and he succeeded on that level, I think. With script in hand, Mann's production of Miami Vice immediately suffered delays due to hurricanes hitting the Caribbean and South Florida shooting locations. While Wilma and Rita were destructive, the impact of those storms, along with the devastating Hurricane Katrina, cost the film a week's worth of shooting time. The budget ballooned, with estimates putting it somewhere in the neighborhood of $130 to $150 million, which is very, very pricey for a down and dirty cop drama. Parts of that, rather fairly or unfairly, can be blamed kind of on Jamie Foxx, sort of. You see, after signing on to Miami Vice, Jamie Foxx won the Academy Award for his turn in Ray, which also increased his demands on Mann's film. Fox reportedly insisted on having a salary increase to exceed co-star Colin Farrell, as well as top billing. And fair enough, because Jamie Foxx, coming off of his Oscar win for Ray, actually was the bigger star, and probably deserved the bigger paycheck because, fact is, he was simply the bigger draw.
We didn't come down here to audition for business. Business auditions for us.
Farrell's pay was reduced slightly to accommodate this, but that was only the beginning. Fox is said to require that all of his flights be private rather than commercial, with Universal providing a jet for the actor. Again, I can't really fault Fox for this. He was such a huge star at the time, people would have been bothering him, and frankly, he was a huge movie star, they always flew private, especially in that era. I can't really fault Jamie Foxx for that. Fox also refused to film scenes on boats or planes, both of which are intrinsic to the look and feel of the Miami Vice television series. Now, this is where some things start to get a little bit strange. Eventually, Fox left the production entirely to return to the United States after gunshots were fired on the set in the Dominican Republic. This forced Mann to scrap the original ending of the movie, shifting the conclusion from Paraguay to Miami. While some sources have said that the original ending was actually far superior to the one that we got, Michael Mann has since said that he likes the version that actually ended up in the finished film. Jamie Foxx was far from the only challenge during production, and, for all they said about Jamie Foxx, I don't think his demands were that crazy. Mann himself was criticized for some of his on-set behavior, which included multiple unexplained script changes and filming in locations that were not safe for the cast and crew. Mann's aim was to make the film as realistic as possible. This included creating simulated drug raids that he brought Colin Farrell on, and that were so realistic that many did not learn until later on that they were actually staged. Sources on the production also said that during some of the shoots, local gang members were hired to work security for the production. Mann has responded to the stories and rumors about Miami Vice's production and simply said this: "The whole making of the movie was filled with adversity. Whatever the crew might have endured, it was all in the service of making a great film. Sometimes folks are going to join this unit and they may have a tough time. Guess what? They're on the wrong movie." Fair enough, folks. Michael Mann was an old school guy and he had an old school attitude towards shooting a film. Perhaps this is why he hasn't really worked a lot in recent years. I think his kind of gritty, take on doing these types of movies just isn't quite the same as what we would think nowadays. The production also took a heavy toll on co-star Colin Farrell, who dealt with major addiction issues while filming Miami Vice, to the point that he apparently recalls nothing of making the movie.
I'm a fiend for mojitos.
As soon as production wrapped, Farrell actually checked into a rehab facility while the rest of the cast and crew attended the wrap party. The demand for realism, something seen in Mann's acclaimed films like Heat and Collateral, meant eschewing all the pop culture elements of the 1980s series, namely the music. The Miami Vice movie does not employ the classic Jan Hammer theme song, nor was Hammer invited to score the film. Hammer responded to this by saying, "I was completely surprised that they didn't have a remake of the theme. I think it's a matter of being too cool for school." Mann, however, did include the Phil Collins song In the Air Tonight, which was a pivotal inclusion in the TV series plot, but in the movie the song is covered by the band Nonpoint, a Miami-based rock group. The soundtrack is populated by John Murphy's more subdued and contemporary score, as well as some really cool tracks by Moby, Mogwai, Auto Rock, it's an amazing song, Goldfrapp, Strict Machine, again, super cool song, Nina Simone, Sinner Man, great song, and Patti LaBelle. When it finally premiered, Miami Vice presented something completely unlike the action-oriented police procedural that was a hit on the small screens. Or again, so they said. Miami Vice was a feature film that divided critics, with Entertainment Weekly, Newsweek, Empire, Rolling Stone, and critic Richard Roper all lauding it, while the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times gave it complete shit. So, why is a film with only a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes also making it onto multiple lists of the best movies of 2006? You see, the film that Michael Mann set out to make with Miami Vice is not a crime thriller in the traditional sense. No critics had anything negative to say about the visuals on display in the movie, which are amongst some of the more gorgeous frames in Michael Mann's career. Miami Vice represents the next evolution in the story that Mann began in 1995's Heat. Believe it or not, there is a vocal minority that does not appreciate that film for the masterpiece that it is. Miami Vice is another meditation on the nature of masculinity in the primal opposing forces of police and criminals.
This is very Cuban, the protective male talking.
It's the talk of a man.
That may sound a bit over the top when discussing a movie whose main characters are Crockett and Tubbs, but it's true. Michael Mann's movies are very rich thematically, and he took Miami Vice very seriously. And in fact, he even took the show somewhat seriously, which is why I suppose he stepped down after season 2 to direct Manhunter. Miami Vice begins and ends very abruptly. In the middle of an undercover case, Crockett and Tubbs start the film off with an action sequence involving an informant played by John Hawkes. This quickly leads the pair of Miami-Dade detectives being deputized into an organized crime drug enforcement task force. There they go undercover to infiltrate a Colombian drug cartel. This leads to run-ins with the Russians, Cubans, and the Aryan Brotherhood in a complicated transnational drug operation.
We got meth, ice, glass, E's, K's, X, Mitsus, Ames, Colombian H.
Crockett also meets Isabella, played by the sultry Gong Li, and falls head over heels in love with her. Something that Crockett was always doing on the TV shows, too. This Miami Vice definitely ups the sexiness compared to the 80s series with the romantic pairings of Colin Farrell and Gong Li, and Naomi Harris and Jamie Foxx. They all share multiple sensual and steamy moments. We also have an excellent supporting cast. Naomi Harris again, she plays Trudy, who is a famous character on the TV show, and Kieran Hines is aboard as FBI agent John Fujima, respectively. Everyone involved with this project came on board to work with Michael Mann regardless of their size of role. Hines especially brings gravitas to his performance, which makes it a highlight of the film. There is definitely a glossiness to this movie that is reminiscent of the original series, but the use of high-definition video gives the production a more immediate feel, one that almost puts the viewer right into the action. Mann's attention to detail in every scene, highlighted by the nightclub sequence, which starts the movie off in the theatrical version, but in the director's cut there's a cigarette boat chase. This all showcases attention to detail in composition and framing of every sequence in the film. Clocking in at 2 hours and 15 minutes, this is a long movie that has few standout action sequences, but opts to focus more on lingering and meditative character-driven sequences. Michael Mann makes Miami Vice feel less about excess and more about the pitfalls of testosterone in some ways. It almost kinda feels like Michael Bay by way of Terrence Malick, which I suppose is a good way to discuss Michael Mann's films. It balances lyrical shots of cars, highways, and landscapes with the intense action which appears in staccato bursts of gunfire. The closing shootout sequence feels like the nighttime sibling to the more famous street standoff from Heat. In so many ways, Miami Vice is fundamentally different from its predecessor, but also ends up kind of being the perfect big screen updating of it. It's kind of the movie that Michael Mann has been building towards making his entire career, and is kind of an interesting button on his career if you consider it in some ways his last truly great film. Black Hat was a fun movie, but I don't think any of us would actually consider it a great movie. The legacy of this movie has grown in the decade and a half since it premiered on the big screen, with contemporary reviews much kinder now than they were in 2006. Had Miami Vice been made today, it almost most assuredly would have been better received, but its impact remains substantial. Filmmaker Harmony Korine cited the movie as a main influence on Spring Breakers, saying, "I could feel the pace. When I watch that film, I don't even pay attention to what they're saying or the storyline. I love the colors and I love the texture." Miami Vice is the thinking person's action movie and an excellent alternative for action aficionados looking for their bloodshed with a little bit of class. Fun factoid, I interviewed Colin Farrell several years ago for 7 Psychopaths, and the entire time I could not stop gushing over how much I loved Miami Vice. I think I even said to him at one point, "Colin, man, that movie's so fucking kick-ass." And Colin Farrell actually agreed with me and said that he was really happy that people were re-examining the movie and finding it, despite the fact that it wasn't a hit when it came out. So, Colin Farrell appreciates Miami Vice, and you know what? I appreciate Miami Vice too. And if you like this kind of program, make sure to click on the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest videos. We're an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.